Hey, Peter. Hey, Loopy. Chris, how are you doing? How's everybody doing tonight? How's everybody doing tonight? If you guys wouldn't mind, hey, Chris, where are you located? It's it's what time is it? It's 9:15 here in 9:15 p.m. Arizona. Just out of curiosity, where are you located? Hey, thanks for that, Michi. Sonia, thank you. Curious as to so I'm here in Arizona, and I hope you guys are having an amazing. I know tomorrow is Martin Luther King Day. Um, I didn't even, what's funny is I didn't even know it was a holiday. The UK. Oh, I love the UK. Sonia, Ohio. What part of Ohio are you in? Ohio's got to be cold right now. I'm curious as to what the temperature is in Ohio right now. Northwest, okay. Gianna, Texas, awesome. Hey, thank you so much for hopping on, guys. I appreciate that. And if you're not already, make sure to, hit the follow button. It's 18, feels like 7 degrees. So I'm in Arizona. Arizona is definitely warmer than Ohio right now. It was interesting. There's some of those games that were going on tonight, the football games. And I couldn't even imagine being in the crowd. It was so cold there. I was actually blown away by, like, I think some of those were 20 degrees, 18 degrees, maybe even colder than that. It was snowing as well too. So I don't know. I love it here in Arizona. I'm actually curious as to what the temperature is here, and I'll let you guys know this temperature in Mesa. So it is 57. It says it's 57 degrees right now. So 57 degrees is definitely obviously warmer than 34 in Florida. That's actually cold for Florida, isn't it? Does it normally? I don't remember it ever being that cold in Florida. Um, yeah, Arizona's always like tends to be on the warmer side. Well, I mean, if you go up to the mountains, like it's certainly gonna be a lot colder when you go into the mountains. Um, but yeah, we get cold this time of year. It helps the oranges grow better, I bet. And the oranges there are absolutely amazing. They're so good in Florida. Um, I mean, if you've ever been to Arizona, I mean, Arizona kind of has its own beauty, you know. It's a desert landscape, and if you're not used to that, it's definitely different. I have a sister that's in Tennessee, and so hey, Michi. So I know every time I fly into Tennessee, it's like it's so green anywhere on the Midwest, but when you look at Arizona, it's like when you're flying in, it's all brown and cactusy, and it's actually kind of funny how cold it gets here. Or I mean, how hot it can get. And if you've never been here for a summer, I think that the hottest it's ever been since and I'm a native to Arizona, but I think the hottest it's ever been was 117 or something, like 126, I think was the hottest. You can actually, if you like cookies, you can actually literally put cookie dough in a cookie tray and put it in your dash, and you can actually, believe it or not, you can bake it in your car, which is absolutely crazy. Prescott, yeah, Prescott. Actually, let's look at what Prescott is. Um, it's definitely, I mean, Prescott's so nice. It's 46 degrees, so it's about 10, 12, 15 degrees cooler. Um, but here's the thing. Here in Arizona though, it's a dry heat, so it's not like you don't get the humidity that you would get in other places. Um, but I mean, it's still hot. And if you can get past the heat, you know, if you can get past the fact that it's scorching during the summer, it's actually really, really nice. It's a dry heat. You put eggs on a cookie sheet and fry them at work. BBK, are you here in Arizona too? Curious where you're located. All I know is that, you know, the football games, it's just crazy cold. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I love the warm. I like it cold. You know, I actually sleep better when it's cold, but I don't know. For me, it's better to. I like the warmth. I like the heat, but I certainly love, you know, the water. And it's funny because when you're looking at some of the videos and pictures of some of these states and the weather, it looks like the lakes are just completely frozen over. And I would imagine that probably happens more often than not. And so, but I'm really grateful for each and every one of you that are hopping on this live. You know, I live here in Phoenix, Arizona, actually Mesa, which is, if you've ever been to Phoenix, you've got Tempe, you've got so many different cities. And I live in Mesa. I've lived here my whole entire life. I love it here. But what I love the most is, you know, this platform and being able to connect with people literally all over the world. I don't know that there's anything greater where you can connect with people like Chris in the UK. It's so fun that technology and what we have today allows us to interact with people from all over the world. And that's why I love getting on here and you know, really learning from you. I hope that you're learning from me as well. Um, and so, you know, I really appreciate you guys being here, and thank you. If you're just hopping on, let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm here in Phoenix, Arizona. We've got some people in Ohio and in Florida. Nickname and I live in Fort Myers, Florida. Okay, perfect. And so, you know, we're talking about something that affects a lot of people. I mean, when you look at the United States, right, this is something that affects 93% of people. It's metabolic health, right? And how do we know that, right? How do we know if we have it? You know, what can we do to fix it? And before we jump in, right, you know, if your health is not where you want it to be, stay with me. You know, this could be one of the most important conversations that we have. And I hope that if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I will do my best to answer them. Upstate New York, Marky Mark, how cold is it in New York? I'm curious how cold it's got to be super cold there. Um, Told you so. I like your handle, by the way. Told you so. I love it. Perry Clean Energy. So, you know, if you are not where you want to be, right? You know, this is one of the greatest times of the year where we're making decisions, right? We are setting goals and we're trying to accomplish things that maybe we weren't able to accomplish last year. And for those of you that don't know my story, you know, in November of 2014, I had a brother, my brother-in-law actually. He's married to I have four sisters and I have one brother. And unfortunately, my one brother passed away when he was 33 years old. But my sister and her husband, they used to live here in Arizona. They live in um, oh wow, that's cold, Marky Mark. It's too cold. But they used to live here in Arizona and now they live in Arkansas. But I was very fortunate and very honored to actually be able to donate one of my kidneys to my brother-in-law. And that was in November of 2014. And, you know, what's interesting is we never really know where we are physically until we're sitting across from a doctor and a doctor tells us kind of what's going on. And it was interesting because, you know, 7 years later in 2021, my doctor told me that I had kidney disease. And I have to, I'm 47 years old, and I have to tell you, that was an eye opener. It completely woke me up. Whiptail Creative, how are you doing? It completely woke me up. And I'll be honest, I kind of felt like I was blindsided by what the doctor was telling me. It didn't make any sense to me. And it was quite frustrating, if I'm being honest with you. And I would imagine that a lot of you that are watching this live right now might be in the same boat. You might feel like everything's normal. You feel fine. Your energies, you just feel fine. And when you're sitting across from your doctor and your doctor tells you something else. And, I'm going to share some personal things with you. And I pray that it helps you to avoid, some of the mistakes that I made. Solomon said in the Bible, in all your gaining, gain understanding. And gaining understanding about how our body actually works, it completely changed my life, right? It was, knowledge is power. Education is amazing. Everything that we can possibly learn can only help us. And so for most of my life, I dealt with some of these things. I struggled with anxiety for most of my life. I have a twin sister. My twin sister and I we were actually adopted together. And my twin sister, she lives in Utah, and it was a lot of fun that I was able to spend time with my twin sister, something that I haven't been able to do in a long time. Went out to dinner with her and her husband and her kids, and it was such a blessing to be with family again. And sometimes I think we take for granted family or just life in general because we never know what tomorrow's going to give us. We don't know what this year is going to give us. We don't know what this month is going to look like. And I would imagine that some of you might be struggling. And this is one of the reasons why I get on here. Is my hope and my prayer is that I can learn from you, and maybe there's something that I share that you can learn from. And there's something that a lot of us, our family members, our kids, our spouses, our partners struggle with, and it's metabolic syndrome. It's insulin resistance, and this is something that is incredibly common in so many people. And BBK, life is very short. I remember somebody asked me, like, why did I donate a kidney? Well, I mean, life is too short, right? And I would hope, and I hope that I never have to be in a position where I need one, right? But I would hope that there would be somebody that would be willing to do the same thing that I did for my brother-in-law. And it was interesting. I was going through my storage unit yesterday, and I found some letters that my nieces and nephews had written me, and they were just thanking me for, giving their dad a second chance. And that's what life is all about. Life is all about helping other people and helping people to, there's a lot of good in this world, even despite a lot of the circumstances and a lot of the negative things, right? There's a lot of good that can be found. And, one of the things that I rely on is, my faith in Jesus Christ and my Heavenly Father. And, I'm grateful for that knowledge, to know that, we have a Heavenly Father that is mindful of us. He knows us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. And so, I hope as I share some things that it relates to you, that it can help you to maybe feel like it's giving you more hope, right? Over the past 2 years, I have made some changes to my health, and it's been mind blowing. It's been an eye opening for me. When you understand how you guys have to look at this. Look at how cute this is. Her name is Charlie. Hi, Charlie. Hi, Charlie. What are you doing? What are you doing? Huh? What are you doing? She's a sweetheart. And then this one, she just wants to eat all the time. Right? Yeah, these where are you? Look at this. Hi. What are you doing? I already fed you. Are you wanting more food, huh? Was it not enough? Huh? This is Toothless because she looks like the dragon from How to Train Your Dragon. If you've ever seen that movie, How to Train Your Dragon, it's a kid's movie, but she looks like Toothless, right? The cat in How to Train Your Dragon. But, over the past couple years, I've learned a lot about how the body works. And, my dad passed away on Easter Sunday, and I miss my dad. And I would imagine that if you've got family members or parents or grandparents that you've lost, right, it's hard. And, it's one of those things where, I wish I knew this 20 years ago because I think that there's a chance that my dad would be here. Now, my dad passed away on Easter Sunday, 2017. So Easter Sunday is always a special day for me because that's the day that my dad passed. And then my brother, I can't believe it was 21 years ago when my brother passed away. And, one of the things that I realize is that we've got to be an advocate for ourselves. And Lulabelle, thank you. We have to be an advocate for ourselves, right? I think sometimes, doctors are so beneficial, right? Doctors have the ability to save our lives, right? And they can help us in so many ways, especially if we're in a medical emergency. But I think it's important for each and every one of us to understand our bodies and why our body reacts the way that it does. And I think it's most important to understand, well, what can we do that can start to improve our health in a positive way, in a natural way, right? Look at our kids today. Would you guys agree that our kids today are struggling with their health? I think there's a lot of people, nearly 3 out of 4 adults are overweight or obese. More than half, unfortunately, is either pre-diabetic or type 2. I mean, this is huge. It's crazy to think that 93% of people, are considered metabolically unhealthy. And BBK, right? The kids are being fed all these processed foods. It's interesting. There's a really good book, and I recommend this book. Actually, I recommend a couple good books. Okay. Why We Get Sick was written by Dr. Benjamin Bickman. And Dr. Benjamin Bickman is a professor at BYU, but he wrote this book, Why We Get Sick. And he actually calls this the silent epidemic. Okay. It's something that unfortunately affects a lot of people. And so, and that's the problem with insulin resistance is it can be silent. It can be quiet. You actually don't even know that you have it. And the reality is 9 out of 10 people that actually have this, they really don't know that they have it. But BBK, you bring me up to a good point. This book it's called Metabolical by Dr. Robert Lustig. And what's interesting is Dr. Robert Lustig, if you know anything about him, he is super smart. He went to MIT. He's got a medical degree from Cornell. He's got a law degree. But he is a childhood endocrinologist, which is just a fancy term for hormone expert. But he said, and BBK, you'll probably understand this. He said that the number one fast food restaurant in the world is not what you think it is. He said it is the number one fast food restaurant in the world, right? It's not McDonald's. Like I thought. I thought it was McDonald's. He said it is our public schools food system. Isn't that interesting? But BBK, it made me think about this. Like, what do our kids start their day with? And I want you guys to understand, Kate, the Bible tells us that a good tree can't produce bad fruit. But I want you to think about a tree and the roots, okay? Right? The fruit of the tree is high cholesterol. It's being tired, right? How many of you are tired all the time? How many of you have high blood pressure? How many of you have blood sugar issues? How many of you have hormone problems? How many of you love to eat literally from the time that you wake up to the time you go to bed? Okay. How many of you feel like you're eating all the time? Okay. But when we think about the root, right, we know what the fruit is because we're living the root, right? We have these We're dealing with this. But the root often goes unnoticed, right? It's deeper, right? If we never address the root, the fruit is going to keep coming, right? When you have weeds outside, right? And I have a lot of weeds because we've had some thunderstorms in the last couple weeks that, like, weeds are, they're up to your waist, you know? But when you think about weeds, right? If we just take the top off, it's just going to keep coming back and coming back, right? We've got to address it at the root. We've got to take the root out. And if we never address the root of our health issues, we're going to continue to have these problems. And I want you to think about your own health as I talk. Drop a 1 in the chat, folks, if energy or weight has been a struggle for you. Okay? If weight or energy has been a struggle for you, put a 1 in the chat. I want you to put a number 2 in the chat if cholesterol or blood pressure has come up. Okay? BBK, GG, thank you. Okay? And I want you to put a number 3 in the chat if blood sugar, cravings, or crashes are something that sound familiar to you. Okay? I want you guys to understand, thank you, Shirley. I want you to understand you're not alone. Okay? You're not. And you're not broken. You're not broken. Okay? I'm going to walk you through, folks, through 2 simple foundations. Okay? Andrea, thank you. Okay? I'm going to walk you through 2 simple foundations that support insulin sensitivity. And I'm going to share a nutritional tool that has helped people literally all over the world to be able to simplify this process. And Richard, thank you. Thank you to everyone who is tapping the screen. Thank you to those that have shared this with people. If there's somebody that you know that is struggling with this, feel free to share this with them so that they can hop on, they can listen, they can ask questions too. Okay. And so, I want you guys to understand insulin. Insulin is like a fire that is burning out of control in your body. Okay. Insulin is a hormone. Okay. That plays a critical role in how our body uses energy. So I want you to think of insulin like a key. Okay. If you think about the key to your house, right? If you don't have a key to get into your house, you can't get in. It's kind of like a key fob to your car, right? You've got to have that. So think of insulin like a key that opens the doors to your cells. Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what happens when you and I eat? Right? When you and I eat, our food is converted into a simple sugar called glucose. Okay. And the glucose enters our bloodstream. And what happens is insulin is released to help basically pick up that. It's kind of like an Uber driver in a sense. It goes and it picks up the glucose out of your bloodstream and it tries to drop it off at your cells, right? Normally your cells would be okay with this. But what happens, folks, is when you and I eat all day long, what do you think happens? Okay. Our blood sugar goes up and down. How many of you have ever heard of the glycemic index? The glycemic index was created by the University of Sydney in Australia, but they created the glycemic index that shows you how food affects your blood sugar, and it also affects your insulin. And so what happens is every time we eat, we spike our blood sugar, our glucose, right? And our body releases a hormone called insulin. Now, insulin, I call it the love handle hormone because it really causes your love handles to grow bigger, right? And what happens is that the more we eat, the more our insulin stays high throughout the day. Now, I want you guys to think about something for a second, okay? There are only 2 natural stages of life. Okay? There's only 2 times in our life where you actually want to be insulin resistant. And that's puberty and pregnancy. Because the body is prioritizing growth, right? Your body's growing during these 2 stages. I want you to understand that outside of those 2 stages, chronically elevated insulin becomes a serious problem. It's bad, okay? I want you to understand, insulin, I'm your friend, insulin is not your friend. Okay. So think of it that way. I'm your friend, but insulin, it's not your friend. Okay. Insulin wreaks havoc on people all over the world. And what happens is when your insulin, folks, stays high for too long, your cells stop responding to it in the way that they should. And what happens is that your body starts to compensate. And what it does is it'll produce more and more insulin just to try and get the same job done. Right? This condition is known as insulin resistance, right? And it is far more common than most people realize. And over the period of time, what happens is this places a lot of stress on the body and it starts to contribute to a wide range of health problems. Okay. And most of you probably have some of these. Think about this. Right now, half of the United States is either diabetic or pre-diabetic. Nearly 3 out of 4 adults are overweight or obese. Think of rates of cardiovascular disease and autoimmune conditions, fertility, right? How many people do you know are struggling with having a family, having kids, right? And these challenges, unfortunately, are not just limited to physical health. It's also been associated with being tired and brain fog, anxiety, mood swings, right? Any one of these things, folks, affects the quality of life for you in many different ways. And here's the crazy thing. What makes this whole thing especially frustrating for a lot of people is that these symptoms that you and I have, they are often treated separately by the doctor. Someone may receive one medication for blood pressure, another for cholesterol, another for blood sugar. And what's crazy is it never addresses what is driving all of these together. So when we only manage the symptoms, remember the root to the tree, the root still remains unaddressed. We have got to take care of the root. And a helpful way to think about this is the fruit and root analogy. Okay? The Bible tells us that a good tree cannot produce bad fruit. But again, the fruit shows up as high cholesterol and stubborn weight gain. How many of you have excess belly fat, right? How many of you have this? How many of you are tired all the time? How many of you walk into a room and maybe you completely forgot why you walked into the room? And so when we ignore the root, that fruit keeps coming back. And, many people experience warning signs before they are ever diagnosed by a doctor, especially with diabetes, right, Gigi? Right? This can include stubborn belly fat, right? How many of you crave food or sugar or salt all the time? How many of you, even after you eat, you're already thinking about your next meal? How many of you have high blood pressure or high cholesterol? How many of you women, and unfortunately 26% of American women struggle with something called PCOS or low testosterone or erectile dysfunction, folks, and this, I'm not talking about guys in their 60s, I'm talking about guys in their 20s, right? Migraines, poor sleep, skin issues. This is a big one, right? Skin tags or the dark patches on your neck or your armpits. How many of you have joint pain? Right? It's called arthritis or neuropathy, chronic inflammation. And I want each and every one of you to know that these symptoms are not personal failures. They're actually signals from your body that something deeper is going on. Some of you may have even heard the term type 3 diabetes used in research conversations. Do you know what type 3 diabetes is? If you do, would you mind dropping that in the chat? You know, my 84-year-old mother, my 84-year-old mother lives in a memory care facility in Tennessee, and she has type 3 diabetes. It's called Alzheimer's and dementia. And folks, if that runs in your family, pay attention to that one, because that is not something that I think any one of you would wish upon anyone. It's devastating, right? And so it's crazy because this is referring to insulin resistance in the brain, which researchers are studying in relation to cognitive decline. You know, the important takeaway from this is not fear, but awareness. I think it's important, again, for you to know why we have these issues. Why is this happening? Metabolic health actually impacts the brain as well. But it's not just physical health, folks, it's mental health as well. Okay. You know, one of the biggest challenges that I think, and thank you, Veronica and Nikki, one of the biggest challenges is that when we talk about insulin, right, it's rarely tested directly. Many people are actually told when you go to your doctor, they're like, your labs are normal, right? You know, your labs look great. But while insulin resistance continues silently in the background. And you know what's scary? Is by the time someone is actually diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, do you guys realize that fire has been burning out of control for somewhere between 10 and 20 years? It's crazy. The good news is that this process is actually modifiable. You can modify it. And this conversation is not about avoiding doctors or even medications. It's about supporting your body alongside what you might already be doing now. You know, when I was told that I had stage 4 kidney disease, my doctor gave me a med that, quite honestly, it made me sick. Right? How many of you have ever heard of Ozempic? I call it Ozempic. Okay. You know, it's crazy. You know, these are foundational lifestyle strategies that consistently improve insulin sensitivity without extreme diets or feeling like you've got to do 2-a-days at the gym. Patty, how are you? Folks, understanding what is happening in your body is the first step to making any changes, right? And if any of this that I've shared with you tonight sounds familiar to you, you're not alone. Okay? Most people are literally walking this path without ever being given the full picture. And once you understand how insulin works and how insulin resistance develops, okay, you can actually begin to connect the dots, right? And you can take meaningful steps towards better health, which is why I get on here. Veronica, I'm going on my third, and I'm thinking that I want to stop. Veronica, I definitely continue to work with your doctor, okay? And I'm happy to connect with any one of you, okay? And if you've got questions, feel free to drop them in, you know, DM me. I'm happy to connect with any one of you, okay? Um, you know, it's the biggest health crisis in the world today is not just our economy. It's metabolic syndrome. It's it blows my mind to realize that 93% of people are affected by this. You know, I had kidney disease. I had, you know, my dad passed away early. My brother passed away early. I had family members, unfortunately, that passed away early. And the crazy thing is that none of us dealt with diabetes. It's not just a weight issue. It's a hormonal issue that affects every system in our body. And so here's my frustration, okay? And surely I'm not. I'm a health coach, okay? Here's the frustrating part. Most people are treating symptoms instead of addressing the actual root cause. And surely I love your scripture that you have posted on your thing. You know, think about our family, our friends, right? I know that we don't go around sharing what we might be dealing with. But I think about this, right? Now, I want you guys to imagine something. Imagine if there was a simple, proven solution that actually helped address the root cause. Would you want to know about it? What if there was a protocol that had multiple patents on it, that had more than 24 clinical studies, and had real world results, right? How many of you are familiar with Rexall? Does anybody remember the Rexall name? I have to be very careful about what I share because I want to make sure that I'm staying compliant. But Rexall, it used to be the biggest drugstore in the world. They started actually in 1903. And what I use daily and have been for 2 years now, most people don't even know that it exists because nobody talks about it. When you go to your doctor, doctors test what they can medicate. Does that make sense? So if you go to your doctor most likely, unless it's like a naturopathic, they're never going to talk to you about what it is that I teach people on a daily basis. Because there's no money in helping people to become healthy. Rexall used to be the biggest drugstore. And the doctors and scientists back in the 80s and 90s, they created something that I use every day. And it was interesting for those of you that recognize the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio. The Cleveland Clinic happens to be the #1 heart hospital on the planet. The Cleveland Clinic, okay? They took 119 hyperlipidemia patients, and they did a study a while back. And what was interesting is that in the study, they gave half what was created by Rexall, and they gave the other half a placebo. And it was crazy to think that at the end of their study, they said that if people were to use this on a regular basis, that it would decrease cardiovascular disease on a population basis. And it would actually decrease the need for lipid-lowering prescription drugs. It's crazy to think how many people are on meds today. And I want you guys to understand something. If Big Pharma owned it, you would hear about it everywhere. But they don't, which is why most people have never been told about it. Now, I love talking about this and sharing this with people because I look at people all around me, right? When I go to the grocery store, when I go to Costco, when I go anywhere, even driving, even walking, I love watching people. And, it's crazy to think that almost every person that I have come in contact with is struggling with something. Would you guys agree? If you agree, put a thumbs up in the chat or put yes in the chat. It just, it's crazy. Patty, thank you. Gigi, Veronica, thank you. And, I started using something back in January of 2024, and it was because a really good friend of mine who used to be a rocket scientist reached out to me in December of 2023, and she said, hey, her and her husband, I used to work with her husband as a financial advisor. She said, you need to use this. You need to look into this. And I didn't know what it was. It was, I sip on this chlorogenic tea every day. It's amazing. But she's like, you need to look into this. And I was like, I didn't know what it was. But I was like, you know what? I've known them for 16, 17 years. She can't be sharing something with me that if it didn't work, she wouldn't share that with me. And so I was kind of, well, maybe it wouldn't work, And make a long story short, one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about getting on here each day and providing information is so that people understand what we can start to do to improve our health without the need for meds or diets. And I've got just a couple more minutes, Nick and everybody else, and I'm gonna hop on tomorrow morning. But when I wake up in the morning, I want to show you just how simple this is. Okay. I am not on any medications. I take a fish oil. I love apple cider vinegar. I drink water. But when I wake up first thing in the morning, what I do is I skip breakfast. I love breakfast. I just have breakfast for lunch or for dinner, right? And when I say breakfast, I'm talking about like eggs and bacon and, maybe waffles once in a while. Okay. But I don't have cereal. I don't have any of that. But I want you guys to understand something, that our body, one of the quickest ways, folks, that you can start to get your insulin under control is going longer periods of time without putting food into your mouth. And I know that that might seem really hard. Fasting, how many of you have ever tried fasting and maybe you felt like you tried it, but you kind of failed at it? Or not necessarily failed, but you feel like you weren't really good at it. And I remember the first many times that I would do it, I didn't know what I was doing. And it was like, I felt like I was starving if I even went a few hours without eating. Because for most of us, we've been taught ever since we were kids to eat every hour or every 2 hours. Okay. I have tried fasting. I wasn't good at it because I don't know how to cook. Username person. So you tried fasting, but if you're not good at cooking, are you eating out all the time? So that's why you tried fasting and wasn't good at it. Patty says, I fasted for 24 hours and my glucose was down. He got scared. I get that, Patty. I actually, I had dinner tonight, but I am starting a 72-hour fast. And I want you guys to understand what happens. And there's something that I do every day that actually makes fasting easier. Okay. It makes it really easy. And so when I wake up in the morning and I'm doing a 72-hour fast, and I want you guys to understand what happens at the end of a 72-hour fast. There's something very special that is called autophagy. If you've never heard of that, autophagy happens at around 17 hours of going without putting food in your mouth. How many of you have ever bought a house and you had to renovate it, right? You had to fix it up. Maybe you tore out the walls and you just redid everything, right? You bought a house that was kind of a fixer-upper and you gutted it, right? That's actually what autophagy is in our body. When you go 17 hours or at least 17 hours, what happens is that your body literally starts getting rid of old, dead, and tired, unhealthy cells. And your body can actually use this for energy, right? We need energy, which is why a lot of us are eating all the time, right? We're getting our energy from the foods. Maybe we're drinking coffee. We're, getting, energy from things that we drink, things that we eat. But what happens, okay? And Patty, you and I can talk about that, but your body actually has the ability to heal itself. God knew what he was doing when he created us, right? I love that our bodies are so powerful. Our bodies have the ability to heal itself if we give our bodies the ability to do so. And so what I use every single day actually helps to detox my liver. It improves insulin sensitivity. It actually nourishes my microbiome, which is where 80% of my immune system is. And when you give your gut the right nutrients, the right things, it's amazing what can happen. And so as you fast, okay, you can have black coffee, you can drink water. Okay, I drink a special chlorogenic tea. And what it does is it shuts the food noise off. Okay, it actually helps to boost your own body's production of something called GLP-1. How many of you are on a GLP-1? If you are, type a 1 in the chat. I know that some of you are actually on it because somebody said they've been on it. This is their third time being on it. Okay, Scott. So do you guys know that your body actually can produce it on its own? It's crazy. Your body is so powerful. Your body can actually produce it. But oftentimes when we go to a doctor, okay, they actually want to give us a GLP-1 med. And I want you guys to understand that there's a lot of side effects. Okay. And some of you might not know that, but I would encourage you to go look those up because it'll change your perspective on actually putting that into your body. And so let me go back to what I was telling you when I wake up and I'm doing a 72-hour fast is I wake up and I sip on this chlorogenic acid tea. And it literally helps to just shut the food noise off. And Scott Widman, how long have you had type 2? How long have you had it? And then I've got a second question for you after finding out how long you've had type 2. 4 years. Okay. And let me ask you this. And for anyone else that might be dealing with type 2, has your doctor ever told you that you can reverse it? Let me know, Scott. Has your doctor ever told you that you can reverse it naturally? I want you guys to understand that there's two different types. Well, actually, there's multiple types of. We've got type 1, we've got type 2, we've got type 3. We know that to be Alzheimer's and dementia. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease, right? That's attacking your pancreas. And so a type 1 actually has to take insulin because without it, we know what can happen, right? But a type 2 diabetic folks is a lifestyle disease. And if we just make some simple changes, you actually can reverse type 2, which is why I talk about fasting. It's called time-based eating. It's called going longer periods of time without putting food into our mouth. And when you do that, folks, what you're doing is when you go for longer periods of time, you're not putting food into your mouth, you're avoiding the glucose spikes, the blood sugar spikes. And when you avoid the blood sugar spikes, what happens is your body doesn't have to release any insulin. And that's powerful. Remember, insulin, there's only 2 times in our life where we want to be insulin resistant. That's puberty and pregnancy. So if we allow insulin to come down, guess what? You allow the inflammation to come down. And your body literally starts, when we fast, okay, your body has 2 fuel sources, okay? Your body is either burning sugar from the foods that you're eating, or your body is utilizing your stored fat. How many of you have the love handles or the excess FAT, right? We've got a lot of extra, stored calories, stored energy in our body. And what's amazing is that your body can actually utilize that as your primary source of fuel. And so when we wake up in the morning and we're hungry, what I would encourage you is drink some water, drink black coffee, right? Without putting sugar or creams in it. And then sip on this. Right? That's an option, right? But what you do is you're allowing your body to go longer periods of time and you're giving yourself a break. And if you're new to fasting, I always encourage people to start with a 12 to 13 hour fast and utilize your sleep as part of your fast. If I go to bed at 10 o'clock and I wake up at 6, I've already fasted for 8 hours. The question is, can you push it? Right? And the goal is every single day, push your first meal back a little bit, right? If you normally eat at 6 o'clock in the morning, push it back tomorrow to 7 o'clock, and then the next day to 8 o'clock, and then the next day to 9 o'clock. And what I would encourage you to do is you will get to a point where you don't even feel the need to want to eat first thing in the morning. And actually, your body actually runs better when you don't eat first thing in the morning. I know that we've been taught differently, right? We've been misled, right? How many of you were told that breakfast was the most important meal of the day? And that's a story for another time, right? I'm not going to talk about that tonight, but when your body actually runs better when you wait. And so fasting is so powerful. It is the quickest way to get your insulin under control. If you've got type 2 diabetes, we've got to get your insulin under control. Fasting is powerful because it does that for you. It starts to heal. And then when you do eat, right, I eat 1 to 2 meals a day. And I'm going to do a 72-hour fast. I'm not going to eat for the next 3 days. And when you do eat, folks, there is an order that I encourage people to eat: fiber first, protein and fat second, and then if you're going to have the sugar and the carbs, save that for last. See, we've been taught that breakfast was the most important meal of the day. So what do? We start our day with a bowl of cereal. Our kids in our public schools food system are starting their day with a bowl of cereal and a glass of orange juice or a glass of apple juice. And that amount of sugar, folks, just in that cereal and juice is more sugar than what an adult should have in an entire day. If we've ever wondered why, more than half of our kids are overweight or obese, why our kids are dealing with, lack of concentration and ADHD and everything else. Okay. How do you know how much food to eat, whether you get enough protein or not? Okay. Well, protein and fats, I'm not going to necessarily talk about that tonight on this live, but if you can get 1 to 2 meals a day, right? Yeah, I know it's such a difference because we've been told to have, 3 meals a day and a snack 2 to 3 times a day. But if you can just, you'll notice your energy levels will go up, right? If you know that you're going to do an extended fast, what I would encourage you is eat a meal that's full of protein and healthy fats. It's crazy to think that we were actually told that fats were bad, right? It's crazy. And fats have little to no effect on your insulin or your glucose, right? When you look at the glycemic index, protein and healthy fats we need protein. Wait, our brain needs it, our muscles need it, but our body needs fats, right? We need to get that from our foods because our body can't produce the omega-3s and omega-6s. So we've got to get that from our foods. Believe it or not, there's only one macronutrient that your body doesn't necessarily need. And I know that there's a lot of people that might agree to disagree with that. And that's carbohydrates. Because when you fast, your body can literally start converting your stored FAT it's called gluconeogenesis. And your body can start utilizing that extra stored FAT as energy. And your body will utilize that. It'll burn that. This is how people start to lose weight the natural ways. And Joseph, you're welcome. Right? Your body can literally lose this naturally. And if any one of you are on, something like this, there's a lot of side effects that come to that. But fasting is a tool that is so powerful, right? And I used to think as a kid that I'm starving, I need to eat something. You really don't. You don't. Okay. Patty, I love that. That's amazing. And here's something many people don't realize is that you can be thin and still be insulin resistant. That's crazy, right? High blood pressure and migraines, skin issues, cholesterol issues, sleep apnea, and brain fog, right? These can all be signs of insulin resistance even without weight gain. It's not about willpower, folks. It's about hormones, right? Most of us were told to move more and eat less, right? The calorie in, the calories out model sounds logical, but the body does not work like a math equation, right? When calories are restricted long term, your metabolism slows down, muscle is lost, your energy drops, and your hormone function actually starts to decline. And studies actually go back over 100 years that actually show this very clearly. And so when you fast or go longer periods of time without eating, your glucose doesn't spike. And no glucose means that there's no insulin spike. Insulin's job is to move glucose into your cells, right? But when insulin stays high all day long, your body is literally storing it. Your body becomes resistant to insulin. And this is what leads to the FAT storage. It's what leads to the inflammation. It's what leads to chronic disease. And I struggled with this for a long time. I actually don't struggle with it anymore. And when I sip on this tea, it's amazing. It just shuts the food noise off and it boosts my energy. The brain fog goes away. That's why I love sharing this with people. because most people are so used to just being on meds or, following a specific diet. And I don't follow a diet, right? There's the second part that I share with people is fiber. Fiber is one of the most powerful tools we have because fiber doesn't turn into glucose. What it does is it actually forms a gel in our stomach. And what it does is it slows the digestion and reduces our glucose spikes from any of the foods that you eat. So this is why eating fiber before or with your meals is so effective, okay? Because remember, there are 3 macronutrients, okay? We've got protein, FAT, and carbohydrates. Protein and FAT are essential, right? We need those healthy ones, right? Carbohydrates are not, because your body can create glucose from stored FAT when your insulin levels are low. That's how FAT loss actually happens. But fiber is so powerful because it doesn't break down, right? You can't digest it. And that's actually where the magic starts to happen inside of our bodies. There was a study that was done, nearly 100 years ago where cats were fed either raw food or processed box food. And the cats that were eating the processed food, they developed chronic disease and reproductive failure within 3 generations. Dr. Francis Pottinger was the doctor that studied this. This just shows you how powerful food quality and fiber truly are. Okay? The problem today is not a lack of willpower. Hunger is stronger than willpower. This is why tools like fasting, support, and fiber are so important if you want to improve insulin resistance, right? And if you want to become insulin sensitive again. When hunger is controlled hormonally, healthy choices actually become very easy for us, right? And what I love about what it is that I use and encourage people to try is it supports liver detoxification. It improves insulin sensitivity. It nourishes the gut microbiome where most of the immune system lives. And when your gut heals, ladies and gentlemen, cravings change, inflammation drops, your hormones literally normalize. I want you to think of insulin resistance like a flooded basement, okay? When you go to your doctor and your doctor checks your blood glucose levels, right? It might look fine on the surface, right? But underneath, insulin is working overtime. It's flooded underneath. And so if we are just treating symptoms, ladies and gentlemen, without fixing the root cause, it's like adding chemicals to a dirty fish tank instead of just changing the water. Does that make sense? When insulin stays high, fat can't burn. Your body can't burn that. But when insulin comes down, guess what you can? The fat's got to go. Anxiety, depression, PCOS, erectile dysfunction, migraines, skin issues, high cholesterol, all of this starts to change. And what I love sipping on, incognito, New York City, is that what you do? And folks, I would love to connect with you one-on-one if you're open to that. What I sip on is made from purified yerba mate. It's loaded with chlorogenic acid. Okay, it reduces oxidative stress dramatically. Okay, which helps to slow down the aging and inflammation that are caused by high glucose levels. Okay, it's plant-based, it's gentle, it's safe. This is why I love sharing this. Folks, I have personally seen people in my own life, people I've connected with all over the world, who've come off diabetes. They've come off their blood pressure meds and the cholesterol meds because insulin resistance starts to improve, right? I have a friend she worked as a cardiac rehab director for over 10 years. She's never seen, and I've never seen results like this ever. And folks, if this resonates with you and if this sounds like what you've been looking for and praying for, you don't have to wait to fix your health. I've got just one more minute before I hop off. When you treat the root cause of the health issues that you might have, the symptoms are going to fade. It's like a fire, right? The smoke are the symptoms that you and I feel. And when we put that fire out, the smoke's going to go away. It'll improve, right? You put the fire out and the smoke disappears. Okay. Folks, I really do appreciate each and every one of you for hopping on. Okay. If you want details or discounts, check the LI link in my bio. Okay. I'm here to help you. And Nard, thank you so much. Okay. I love getting messages from people that are grateful, right? If I showed you how many text messages I get from people literally daily, it would blow you away. I've got hundreds, if not thousands, of text messages over the last 2 years from people all over the world that have told me that this was an absolute game changer for them. And you can't put a price on that. I just wish that I knew what I'm sharing with you now 20 years ago. And Mom Diane, yes, right? I wish I knew this 20 years ago because my dad, my brother, there's a chance that they would still be here today. And many other people that I've loved that are no longer here because of these health issues. Now, I'm not anti-doctor. I'm not anti-medicine. I'm anti-ignoring the root cause. I think it's important for us and for each and every one of you to understand why our body is acting the way that it is or responding, because knowledge is power, right? We can make different changes, right? And in 2026, I think for a lot of people is about making changes. Folks, what I use daily is an absolute game changer. It's literally saved my life. And if you're open to just learning about something that can work with what you're already doing and actually change your life and really, really work and has no side effects, there's no contraindications with this. You could be on 100 meds and it would still work. Okay. Folks, I love and appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for being on. I will be on tomorrow morning at 7 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. Would love to have a lot of you on that live tomorrow morning. And if there's people that you love and care about that are struggling with their health, feel free to share this with them. Okay. Love and appreciate each and every one of you. I hope that you guys have a blessed night. God bless.